The Secret Service under fire for what lawmakers call a lack of planning and a communications breakdown surrounding the first assassination attempt on President Donald Trump. In its preliminary findings, the House Task Force investigation details numerous security failures in the days leading up to that July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. They say that shooting was preventable. Joining me now, I have Republican Florida Congresswoman Laurel Lee, a member of the Trump assassination attempt task force. Congresswoman, welcome back to the show. As always, you and I have talked at length about the egregious oversights of that day before. This 53-page report just dropped 24 hours ago. Can any actionable change come from it?
Good morning, Markie. It's great to see you. And I do believe we've already seen actionable change as a consequence of these events and the investigation that we've been conducting. So the two key things that we identified related to Butler were a failure to adequately plan in advance of the event, and then an inadequate amount of communication and coordination the day of. So I know the Secret Service has been working hard to make sure that they've added additional resources, that they are doing more advanced work with local law enforcement, really to make sure that when they're out at an event with President Trump or with Vice President Harris, that there is that cohesive use of federal and local law enforcement working together to secure these sites.
Yeah. And you brought me to my next question, because I was going to say 2 weeks out to the election day, both of these candidates still have so many rallies. So you can confirm Secret Service has stepped up its game, especially for voters who want to attend these rallies?
Absolutely. And that was the number one objective of this task force is, of course, to understand what happened and make sure that there's accountability and corrections to any things that need to be improved. But number one goal is make sure that President Trump and any other protectee are being kept safe through this home stretch. So that being said, there's a lot of work left to do to get to the bottom of how all of these failures could have coalesced. There are some reforms that need to be made to the way that Secret Service approaches event management, its workforce. So there are a number of things in our final report that will also be reviewed and analyzed. But there has been a tremendous amount of work done thus far, both by Congress and by Secret Service, to make sure that more is being done in this home stretch to prevent incidents like this from occurring.
And Congresswoman, when you look in your crystal ball, if you will, I mean, what does the future of the Secret Service look like? And what's the answer to getting there? Is it more funding, or what's it going to take?
Well, I do think there needs to be a look at whether there are enough Secret Service agents on this protective mission, and also how can they effectively train and prepare their partners, whether it's from Homeland Security investigations or local law enforcement. How can those individuals also be better prepared and integrated into the Secret Service mission? So I do think there will need to be really an expansion of the number of highly trained, specialized Secret Service agents. Whether that requires additional funding is a different question, because there is overall a lot of funding going to the Department of Homeland Security. So it might be that we need to refine where that's being spent, how it's being spent. But I don't think there's any question that we need additional Secret Service agents on the ground who are prepared to take this mission on.
Yeah, it's just been it was a scary summer of campaigning. There's no doubt about it. 30 seconds left, Congresswoman. We know the task force isn't done with the investigation. What comes next? What's the biggest question you still have top of mind?
Well, we are still looking at, of course, there's a second very frightening assassination attempt against President Trump in Florida. So one of the things that we are still doing is looking at that. Were there any of the same failures? Were there any of the same issues that repeated there at that second attempt? So we're still looking at that, and also the question of who these people were, where they came from, did they have any influences from other people? So those questions were really great, were strong. We've got a lot of information about the logistics, what failed, what strategy didn't work. But the questions we still want to answer are the broader ones about where did these people come from, and the work that we can do to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again, and that we're prepared for the future threats that come.
Well, we'll be eager to see all of those updates ourselves. Congresswoman Laurel Lee, as always, thank you for your time right here on Morning in America. Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.